Guys, so we saw the new Pep Guardiola tactic that he's recently tried to adapt to this season. The way he's actually able to play through Liverpool. And how is Guardiola able to do this? Guardiola is now utilizing the use of very wide fullbacks and very narrow inside forwards. So that might be Pep Guardiola's secret bullet this season. And how did this tactical change, especially in the second half, guarantee Manchester City the much needed victory? So, it's been a while, but let's look at the open play scenarios. The first chart shows the open play scenarios, especially the first hour of the game, while the second one shows the open play scenarios in the second hour of the game. So what really made Manchester City do this? And if you're new in this channel, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. So both Liverpool and Manchester City started with a 4-2-3-1. But what did Liverpool do in possession? Now, Liverpool, being at home in the initial phases of the game, enjoyed much of the possession. And what they did was they looked to build from the back, drawing Manchester City to the press. Now, what Liverpool wanted to do was to try and have Manchester City commit to that press and then play through them. So one way they did this was either by luring Manchester City to even have their midfielders stepping out from midfield to press Liverpool's centre-backs. Now, Liverpool's centre-backs would go back to Alisson, and Alisson will now play as the extra player during build-up. And Manchester City would move to the 4-2-4 pressing structure that they generally like to use, with Marmoush joining Haaland or even sometimes Bernardo Silva doing that. However, the problem for Manchester City is that despite them choosing to go this way, it meant that they were constantly overloaded in midfield. How? Because Manchester City are pressing with a 4-4, it means that the midfield, where they're being outnumbered 3v2, is always an option. And if O'Reilly tucks in to cover Gravenberch, then the ball over the top, especially to the fullback, was always an outlet, allowing the fullback to get the ball and look to play the ball to Mo Salah. In this case, Szoboszlai was the one who was starting from that fullback position, allowing Salah to even get the ball, play the ball back to Gravenberch, and then look to have Gravenberch being the one who carries the ball forward. Or isn't it? So because of that, what we notice now is when you look at those scenarios where the fullback was looking to position himself between the Chelsea centre-back and the fullback, you notice one thing. Manchester City were now trying to use O'Reilly as a hybrid player to cover Gravenberch. And the overload for Liverpool was always down the left. So what we started to see is that the goalkeeper Alisson started to use Konate. And Konate in particular started to stay out wide to be an option to try and outnumber Marmoush. So when Haaland will move to press Alisson, Alisson will play the ball to Konate. And once the ball is played to Konate, Marmoush now will be drawn. Now, if Marmoush is drawn to Konate, it leaves two problems for the team. One, if the O'Reilly covers Szoboszlai, then the pass to Gravenberch is quite easy, because this structure allowed Liverpool to always have that extra player. And if O'Reilly chooses to cover Gravenberch, then the pass to Szoboszlai was on. So the Szoboszlai gets the ball. Szoboszlai is able to play the ball to Mo Salah in this case. And once Mo Salah has already moved there, you could already see now Liverpool trying to progress with the ball. So these were the key tenets in which Arne Slot wanted to get Liverpool. So Manchester City decided to relax from the aggressive high press and move to something quite slightly deeper. Because when Liverpool will beat this press, they were now man-to-man with Manchester City's backline. And even Karkes down the left was able now to advance, further overloading Manchester City. Now, because Liverpool were having this midfield overload, Manchester City decided to drop into a mid 4-4-2 block. Now, Liverpool started to play with a 4-2-3-1, but in this case, it even started to morph into something more to do with the 4-2-3-1, with Liverpool trying to overload Manchester City and Manchester City trying to use their forwards to try and reduce that numerical advantage through the center. Now, the fullbacks Liverpool were pushing high up to draw out Manchester City's wide players to cover them, while Manchester City were trying to go man-to-man, especially in midfield. Now, this was causing all sorts of issues because, yes, Liverpool centre-back had the ball, but there was no easy pass through the midfield. So one way that Liverpool did this was by having Florian Wirtz constantly floating in between the lines and having Ekitike or Gakpo dropping deep to cover Rodri. So this meant that Wirtz picking up the ball in different sections of the pitch allowed Liverpool to play through Manchester City, and they had areas where they were looking to create chances. So what about Manchester City? What did Manchester City do? And how did Pep Guardiola evolve City? Now with Manchester City, it was quite unique in the way they looked to try and play. One way was they were trying to build from the back by having their goalkeeper, Gianluigi Donnarumma, with the ball, and then having Rodri being the one who drops deeper, while Manchester City were looking to have their fullbacks high and very wide and looking to rely on Bernardo Silva and Rodri to be the ones who look to press to actually help in the build-up. Now, Liverpool decided to go man-to-man, even Ekitike going after Alisson. Now, this would allow Donnarumma to play the ball to Bernardo Silva, who would immediately look to be pressed by McAllister, while Bernardo Silva would look to shuffle the ball out to Matheus Nunes, because the fullbacks were always the option. Even Manchester City's forwards started to drop even further deeper, dragging Liverpool's backline deeper and deeper and deeper. And once Gianluigi Donnarumma came into play, it always meant that the only outlets for Manchester City were to go wide to Aït-Nouri or Nunes. And that has always been the option now. So what happened is that down the left, it was quite problematic because Salah was not tracking back. And because Salah was not tracking back, Szoboszlai constantly found himself 2v1 overloaded by Aït-Nouri and Marmoush. And because of Salah's position in this case, it always meant that Manchester City were focusing their attacking down the left, trying to create as much overload down the left. Now with Nunes, it was quite unique because when Manchester City were building up and Nunes was starting high and wide, Liverpool were on the right hand side. Liverpool were much more aggressive in that if both the Salah and Ekitike were going for the centre backs, then it meant that the ball to Nunes was on. But with Nunes, it was quite difficult because Gakpo actually started in a deeper position to cover Nunes, unlike Mo Salah down the left. So it always made it clear that whenever Nunes got the ball, he was already immediately under pressure from Cody Gakpo. And there comes Manchester City's other build-up strategy. By dropping Semenyo so deep, it meant that Manchester City wanted to use Semenyo as the player in between the lines, but Kakes was very touch-tight on him, making building from the right very difficult and forcing Manchester City to go directly towards the left. And down the left is where Manchester City enjoyed most of the success. Now, in the attacking phases of play, this is where we saw Guardiola's new system. The new system was no inverting fullbacks, but more to do with fullbacks who look to overlap and look to generate width. Fullbacks who start deeper and higher and a bit wider to try and stretch the opposition, while flooding the midfield with as many as 6 players, with Bernardo Silva joining Rodri during build-up and having both Aït-Nouri and Nunes starting high and wider. Now what this meant is that Manchester City were constantly overloading midfield, and if Liverpool choose to play narrow, you will see Bernardo Silva stepping out of that midfield to receive the ball directly from the centre backs, and once he gets the ball, he will now look to carry the ball with players making runs, Haaland making runs, Marmoush making runs, and even sometimes Semenyo looking to make runs, dragging Liverpool's backline deeper, opening up spaces and also creating spaces on the other side for quick shifts of play. Now, what we are noticing with Pep Guardiola and his victory over Anfield is that Guardiola is looking to adapt his system. He's looking to create a situation where he's able to create more problems for the opposition. Now, this is even creating more uncertainty for teams like Liverpool. Now, Manchester City are back in the title race, and the title race seems to actually getting hotter and hotter. So what do you think? Do you think that Manchester City will chase Arsenal all the way to the end? Leave your comments in the comment section area below. Thanks for watching, and the next video will be Manchester United versus Tottenham.